Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is step forward when everyone else steps back. The wind over Kareth Outpost carried the dry hiss of red dust across the settlement's punishment square, rattling loose metal panels and humming through antenna towers that blinked faint blue against the pale sky. Daniel Carter tasted the dust on the back of his tongue as he stood at the edge of the gathered crowd, hands resting on the worn tool belt that marked him as nothing more than a station mechanic. 2 weeks earlier, he had been repairing mining drones on a quiet asteroid belt. Now he was watching an alien court deliver justice in a place where humans rarely spoke and never interfered. At the center of the square stood a tall iron frame used for public discipline, its dark alloy posts rising nearly 8 feet high, etched with old ceremonial markings that glowed faintly under the morning sun. Bound lightly against the frame was a young alien woman whose blue skin seemed almost luminous against the dusty air. Her name, Daniel had heard whispered through the crowd, was Lyra Valen. She stood straight despite the restraints, chin lifted, silver blue hair moving gently in the wind, as if the storm itself refused to disturb her dignity. Around the platform, armored sentinels of the Valen Dominion formed a half-circle, their bronze armor plates reflecting thin bands of sunlight, while the crowd, miners, traders, off-world workers, watched in tense silence. Above them, a digital board displayed the ruling in several trade languages. Unauthorized removal of water reserves. Sentence: 10 ceremonial lashes. Daniel's jaw tightened when he read it the second time. Water theft. On a world where the temperature climbed past 110 degrees Fahrenheit before noon, stealing water meant desperation, not rebellion. A tall magistrate stepped forward, voice amplified through a hovering drone. Lyra Valen, daughter of House Valen. You have violated Dominion law by removing protected resources from the military reservoir. Murmurs rippled through the square at the mention of her house name, but Lyra did not respond. She simply stared ahead toward the horizon where the desert met the sky. Daniel followed her gaze and wondered what she saw out there beyond the dust storms and mining rigs. The magistrate continued, tone calm and formal. The punishment will be carried out immediately. The drone lights brightened slightly as attendants prepared. The ceremonial instrument used for the sentence, a symbol of law older than the colony itself. Daniel felt something twist in his chest, the same stubborn instinct that had gotten him in trouble more times than he could count back on Earth. People in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, but no one moved forward. Humans on Kareth had learned quickly that survival often meant staying quiet. Lyra finally spoke, her voice clear and steady despite the tension in the air. Proceed. There was no fear in her tone, only quiet acceptance. That was the moment Daniel Carter realized he could not stand there and watch. The dust blew harder across the square as he took a single step forward, boots crunching against the grit-covered metal walkway. One step turned into 2, then 3, until he found himself walking straight toward the platform, while the entire crowd slowly turned to look at the lone human crossing the line that no outsider was supposed to cross. Daniel Carter stood at the base of the platform as the attendants prepared the ceremonial framework, the metal frame gleaming under the harsh light of the sun that had climbed well past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. He adjusted the strap of his utility belt, feeling the weight of the tools he carried, not for work now, but as a silent reminder of the skills that had kept him alive on distant outposts and asteroid colonies. Lyra Valen remained still against the frame, her blue skin catching the light in a way that made her look almost ethereal, silver-blue strands of hair shifting with the gentle wind. She glanced at Daniel once, her eyes narrowing slightly, perhaps trying to understand the human who had stepped forward into a situation no other human dared approach. Daniel focused on his breathing, letting the desert wind fill his lungs and steady his heart, each gust carrying the fine red dust across the square, coating the ground, and glinting off the polished armor of the alien sentinels. The magistrate raised his hand, signaling the start of the proceedings, and a hush fell over the gathered crowd, their collective attention snapping to the human who had claimed responsibility. Daniel moved closer to the frame, the dust crunching beneath his boots in rhythm with the low hum of the settlement's machinery that served as background noise to the tense scene. Lyra's gaze followed his movement, a mixture of astonishment and wariness in her expression. When he reached the base of the platform, Daniel looked up at her and simply nodded, a silent promise of endurance and solidarity, the kind that needed no words. The attendants began their ceremonial preparations, adjusting the straps and testing the mechanisms that would carry out the formal sentence, while Daniel shifted his stance slightly to better absorb the sun's heat and the unspoken weight of expectation. The alien crowd murmured amongst themselves, some astonished, some skeptical, all aware that human intervention in such a trial was nearly unheard of. Daniel's eyes scanned the horizon briefly, noting the distant shapes of the settlement's towers and mining rigs, the landscape stretching into a haze of red dust and sunlight, grounding him in reality even as the ceremonial instruments loomed over him. He felt the first slight tug of the framework, the attendants testing the restraints, and he met Lyra's eyes again, offering a small, calm smile that carried reassurance and defiance in equal measure. Time seemed to slow, each second punctuated by the faint creak of metal and the distant call of the settlement's alert system, a constant reminder of the life beyond this square. Daniel's mind focused on the principle behind his choice, the simple human belief that no one should bear punishment unjustly alone. Lyra's expression softened imperceptibly, a subtle acknowledgement of the human conviction standing before her. The crowd's energy shifted slightly, the tension now tinged with awe as the unusual sight of a human assuming responsibility for an alien sentence drew every eye. Daniel adjusted his grip on the strap of his belt again, feeling the heat of the sun on his arms and the fine grit in the air, and thought only of endurance, empathy, and the quiet assertion of moral courage, knowing that in the stillness before action, the true measure of character was revealed. Each observer, human and alien alike, could sense the quiet determination emanating from Daniel, the silent agreement that some principles were worth stepping into the glare of scrutiny and heat for, and even the distant wind seemed to pause momentarily, as if acknowledging the significance of the moment and the human who had chosen to face it. The heat of the day pressed down on Daniel Carter as he remained at the base of the platform, the metal beneath his boots warm and humming faintly with the residual energy of the settlement. Lyra Valen's eyes followed him with a mix of curiosity and caution, her posture unwavering, yet the subtle tightening of her hands against the restraints revealed the tension she could not hide. Daniel adjusted his weight slightly, feeling the coarse texture of the dust between his fingers, reminding himself that every step he had taken to reach this moment was deliberate, grounded in the simple belief that no one should face hardship alone. The alien sentinels watched silently, their bronze armor reflecting streaks of sunlight that danced across the faces of the onlookers, a crowd of mixed species, miners and traders, all sensing the unusual determination in the human who had stepped into an alien judgment. Daniel raised his hand briefly in a calm, measured gesture, not to stop the ceremony, but to signal his acceptance of the responsibility, his eyes meeting Lyra's with a quiet assurance that spoke louder than words ever could. She blinked, a fraction of surprise crossing her face as she registered his resolve, the tension between them softening just enough to allow the faintest spark of trust. Around the square, murmurs arose and subsided as observers processed the sight, a human willingly assuming the consequences meant for an alien of high standing, and the shift in energy was palpable, a ripple of admiration threading through the crowd. The magistrate stepped back, scanning the assembly, and then Daniel, a faint crease of curiosity appearing across his features as he recognized the unusual circumstance. Daniel's focus remained on Lyra, noting how the light struck her blue skin and how the gentle movement of her hair framed her expression, a mixture of pride and apprehension, and he allowed himself a slow, steady breath to anchor his presence in the moment. The air seemed to thicken, carrying the scent of dust, sun-baked metal, and the faint tang of the settlement's machinery, all combining to create an atmosphere of tense anticipation. Daniel's gaze swept the horizon briefly, taking in the distant outpost towers, the shimmering heat rising off the metal walkways, and the desert stretching into the far reaches, a vast landscape that mirrored the magnitude of his decision. He adjusted the strap of his belt once more, the leather rubbing against his fingers as a reminder of his ordinary skills and ordinary life. Yet his choice here was extraordinary. Lyra's eyes softened imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them that conveyed understanding and respect without a single word. The crowd shifted, leaning in, drawn to the quiet courage displayed by a human who had made a deliberate decision to stand in place of another, bridging the gap between worlds, cultures, and expectations. Daniel centered himself, feeling the weight of responsibility, the wind carrying fine red dust across the square and over his skin, and thought only of endurance, integrity, and the quiet assertion of moral courage that did not require recognition but would not go unnoticed. Each observer, human and alien alike, sensed the steady resolve emanating from him, a testament to the principle that guided his actions, and even the distant hum of the settlement seemed to fall into rhythm with the steady beat of his conviction, a silent chorus honoring the choice to act rightly in a moment of profound consequence. The first rays of the sun climbed higher over Kareth Outpost, casting long shadows across the dusty square where Daniel Carter remained standing, the faint warmth of the morning sun brushing his skin as he shifted slightly to ease the tension in his shoulders. Lyra Valen's silver-blue hair shimmered with each subtle movement, catching the light in strands that seemed to glow against her vibrant blue skin. The alien girl's eyes followed Daniel, not with fear, but with a growing understanding that he was not here for spectacle or recognition, but out of a sense of quiet principle. The attendants continued their careful preparations, the ceremonial framework standing tall and rigid, a symbol of authority and tradition that contrasted sharply with the simple, human act of moral courage unfolding beneath it. Daniel took another steady breath, feeling the coarse grit of the square beneath his boots and the heat of the sun above, anchoring him in the present as he prepared for the moment that would mark him in the memories of all present. Around them, the crowd remained hushed, the mix of alien and human spectators holding their collective breath, drawn by the unspoken gravity of the situation. Daniel's gaze flicked to the distant towers of the outpost and the mining rigs beyond, the landscape stretching endlessly into the desert haze, a reminder of the isolation and vastness of the world they occupied. Lyra's expression softened incrementally as she watched him, the tension in her posture easing just enough to reveal a flicker of appreciation and trust. Daniel shifted his stance subtly, adjusting the weight across his shoulders as he focused on his breathing, each inhale grounding him, each exhale releasing doubt. The alien sentinels observed quietly, their polished bronze armor catching streaks of sunlight and reflecting the scene with precise stillness. Yet there was a sense of alertness in their rigid positions, a recognition that the human before them was acting beyond expectation and custom. The wind carried the faint scent of dust and hot metal across the square, mingling with the subtle hum of the outpost's machinery, a continuous reminder of the life and labor beyond the ceremonial area. Daniel's eyes returned to Lyra, noting the slight narrowing as she regarded him with a mixture of surprise and respect, her gaze steady even as the attendants made the final adjustments to the framework. Around the perimeter, murmurs rose and fell as the crowd processed the unprecedented scene of a human assuming responsibility in a formal alien proceeding, the act bridging a gap of culture, species, and expectation that few had thought possible. Daniel centered himself once more, letting the warmth of the sun and the rhythm of his heartbeat keep him present, understanding that endurance, moral clarity, and the quiet assertion of human integrity were his only allies in this moment. The subtle nod he offered to Lyra conveyed both reassurance and an unspoken bond, a shared understanding that transcended words, cultures, and the rigid codes of alien law. Observers, human and alien alike, could sense the steadiness in his posture, the unyielding calm in his expression, and the determination that would not waver regardless of circumstance, a testament to the quiet strength of a human standing resolute in the face of tradition and expectation. The midday sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the red dust of Kareth Outpost, and Daniel Carter shifted slightly on the platform, feeling the heat rising through the soles of his boots as he maintained his steady stance. Lyra Valen's blue skin glimmered faintly under the sunlight, and the subtle movements of her silver-blue hair in the breeze made her appear almost weightless despite the tension in her posture. Daniel's eyes remained locked on hers, offering a calm reassurance without words, a silent statement of solidarity that spoke louder than any explanation could. Around the platform, the attendants continued their careful adjustments, ensuring that every strap and bar was positioned correctly, while the assembled crowd, miners, traders, off-world visitors, watched in a quiet mix of anticipation and awe. The air carried the scent of dust, sun-warmed metal, and distant fuel lines from the settlement's machinery, mixing into a tangible tension that seemed to vibrate across the square. Daniel took a measured breath, letting the rhythm of his heartbeat anchor him as he observed the subtle shifts in Lyra's expression, noting how her eyes softened incrementally as she registered his determination. The alien sentinels standing guard around the platform remained still, polished armor reflecting the sunlight in streaks, and even they seemed to sense the weight of what was unfolding, the unusual presence of human conviction in an alien ritual. Daniel adjusted his stance, grounding himself further with each movement, the grit of the platform beneath his boots reminding him of the ordinary skills and experiences that had brought him to this moment, yet elevating their significance through the deliberate choice to act with courage. The murmurs of the crowd rose and fell like the wind through the nearby towers, a subtle acknowledgement that the scene defied expectation and demanded attention. Lyra's gaze flicked toward the horizon briefly, a sign of respect, then back to Daniel. And in that motion there was an unspoken understanding, a recognition that the human before her had chosen to stand where others would have fled. Daniel's breathing remained steady, each inhale filling his lungs with the arid air of the desert world, each exhale releasing doubt and uncertainty, reinforcing his resolve. The gentle hum of distant machinery and the occasional shift of dust across the square created a rhythm that seemed to harmonize with the silent heartbeat of courage present in the moment. Daniel's eyes swept the expanse of the outpost one more time, taking in the distant mining rigs and communication towers, grounding himself in the tangible reality of the settlement, while simultaneously acknowledging the significance of his decision and the impact it might have on the perception of humans among the alien community. Lyra's expression, once cautious, now held a subtle softness, a faint acknowledgement that Daniel's presence and choice had altered the dynamic, bridging cultural and species divides through a quiet but unmistakable demonstration of principle. Each observer, human and alien alike, could sense the calm strength and steady moral conviction emanating from Daniel, the unspoken declaration that some actions, small or great, defined character beyond tradition, expectation, or authority, and even the wind seemed to carry the weight of this moment across the red dust of the outpost, a quiet testament to the enduring power of empathy and courage. The sun had risen fully over the outpost, scattering the shadows of the towering framework across the red dust as Daniel Carter maintained his calm stance, every muscle taut yet controlled, grounded by the knowledge that his choice had shifted the perception of those around him. Lyra Valen's gaze softened as she observed him, a subtle acknowledgement of the silent courage he had displayed, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and tentative trust. The attendants moved with quiet precision, their metallic instruments gleaming as they finalized the setup, while the surrounding crowd remained hushed, the murmurs now laced with awe at the humans standing resolute in an alien ceremonial space. Daniel's boots pressed against the coarse metal flooring, sending up faint wisps of red dust with every micro-movement, each step a reminder of the ordinary life he carried into an extraordinary moment, a life rooted in principle and empathy. He inhaled deeply, the dry desert air filling his lungs, and exhaled slowly, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat synchronize with the subtle hum of distant machinery, the constant background noise of the settlement that served as a reminder of continuity and life beyond the square. Lyra shifted slightly, releasing a hand from the restraint briefly to brush a loose strand of silver-blue hair behind her ear, a gesture of unconscious acknowledgement that she had begun to recognize the depth of his choice, the human willingness to accept responsibility without expectation or reward. Around them, the alien sentinels adjusted their stances imperceptibly, the bronze plates of their armor catching sunlight in flickering patterns, and even they seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, a recognition that Daniel's quiet resolve carried weight beyond the framework of law and ceremony. The murmurs of the onlookers rose again, softer now, as the unusual sight of human determination and compassion unfolded before them, challenging preconceived notions and creating a new rhythm of respect within the square. Daniel's eyes swept briefly over the settlement, noting the distant mining towers and communications arrays, the endless desert stretching into the horizon, grounding him in the reality of his environment while highlighting the significance of his action. The heat rose from the metal framework, pressing against his arms and shoulders, yet he remained still, focused on endurance, empathy, and the silent assertion of moral courage, knowing that every observer, human or alien, was watching not just his body, but the consistency of his principles and the integrity of his spirit. Lyra's eyes lingered on him with a quiet reverence, the slightest curve of her lips hinting at relief and appreciation, the tension in her posture easing as she realized that the human standing before her was not merely present in body, but fully engaged in an act of deliberate moral strength, a bridge between worlds, cultures, and expectations. And the dust-laden wind carried the quiet acknowledgement of courage across the outpost, a tangible reminder of the power of steadfastness, compassion, and the simple choice to act rightly in a moment when all eyes were upon them. The heat of the afternoon pressed down on the outpost as Daniel Carter remained poised at the base of the platform, muscles tense but controlled, every movement deliberate as he prepared for the culmination of his choice. Lyra Valen's blue skin glimmered faintly in the harsh sunlight, her silver-blue hair swaying gently in the breeze as her eyes tracked Daniel's steady presence, a mixture of curiosity and quiet trust in their shared understanding. The attendants continued to adjust the ceremonial apparatus with precise movements, their metallic instruments gleaming under the sun while the crowd of miners, traders, and alien onlookers held their collective breath, aware that this was a rare moment where human resolve intersected with alien tradition. Daniel's hands rested lightly on the coarse metal of the framework, grounding him against the rising warmth of the day and the fine dust that stirred around the square, a reminder of the ordinary life that had carried him to this extraordinary moment. He took in a measured breath, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat in sync with the subtle hum of distant machinery, the persistent background noise of the settlement that underscored the continuity of life beyond the square. Lyra's posture softened imperceptibly as she studied him, the tension in her shoulders easing and her eyes reflecting a growing acknowledgement of his resolve, a silent recognition that transcended the rules and customs of her people. Daniel shifted his stance slightly, the heat radiating from the metal beneath his boots pressing through his soles, yet he remained unwavering, focused on moral clarity and the quiet assertion of empathy and courage. Around the perimeter, the alien sentinels adjusted subtly, the bronze plates of their armor catching streaks of sunlight and reflecting the scene in fragments, the subtle movement a testament to their awareness of the unprecedented action unfolding before them. The murmurs of the crowd rose and fell as they witnessed the human taking responsibility, the quiet strength of his character bridging the gap between species, and the stillness of the moment was punctuated only by the whisper of wind across the outpost towers and the distant hum of mining operations. Daniel's gaze swept the horizon, taking in the far-off towers and communication arrays, the desert stretching endlessly, grounding him in the tangible world while underscoring the magnitude of the moral stand he had taken. Lyra's eyes met his once more, a softening in their depth, the slightest hint of a smile acknowledging his willingness to endure the moment with dignity and purpose. Daniel's breathing remained steady, each inhale filling him with the dry, warm air of the desert, each exhale releasing tension and doubt, reinforcing the unwavering calm he maintained. Observers, human and alien alike, could sense the integrity emanating from him, the silent declaration of steadfastness and principle that required no words, and even the shifting wind seemed to carry the weight of the human courage across the square, marking a moment that would resonate in the memory of all who watched, a quiet testament to the enduring power of choice, empathy, and the demonstration of moral strength in a world defined by strict codes and expectations. The sun had begun its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long, deep shadows across the red dust of Kareth Outpost, as Daniel Carter remained steady, a calm presence at the base of the platform while the ambient heat radiated from the metal beneath his boots. Lyra Valen's eyes followed him with a quiet intensity, her blue skin shimmering subtly in the fading light, the silver-blue strands of her hair brushing against her shoulders with each slight movement in the desert breeze. The attendants had completed their preparations, leaving the ceremonial framework standing tall and imposing, its dark alloy surfaces catching the sun in streaks that highlighted the precise craftsmanship of generations of alien tradition. Daniel's stance was unwavering, each breath measured and deliberate, his gaze fixed on Lyra in a silent exchange of understanding, a recognition that transcended the rules and expectations of the Valen Dominion. The crowd, a mix of humans and aliens, remained still, the low hum of the outpost's machinery and the distant clatter of mining equipment forming a subtle backdrop to the charged atmosphere of anticipation. As the wind swept across the square, lifting fine particles of red dust into the air, Daniel felt the weight of every observer's gaze yet remained resolute, his body grounded by the coarse texture of the metal platform and his mind focused solely on the principle of acting rightly in a moment that demanded courage. Lyra's posture softened further, the tension in her shoulders easing imperceptibly, her eyes reflecting a growing acknowledgement of the human who had chosen to stand in her place, bridging the gap between species and culture without a word. The alien sentinels shifted minimally, polished bronze armor catching the fading sunlight in a flicker, their silent vigilance a testament to the extraordinary nature of the human presence among them. The murmurs of the crowd rose and fell gently as they processed the unusual sight, the steadfastness and calm determination of Daniel resonating beyond the immediate moment and planting the seeds of respect among those who watched. Daniel's gaze swept across the horizon briefly, taking in the distant towers and mining rigs of the outpost and the endless expanse of the desert stretching toward the horizon, grounding him in the tangible reality of the environment while emphasizing the moral weight of his choice. Lyra's expression, once guarded, now reflected quiet admiration, her eyes lingering on Daniel with a soft intensity that spoke of trust, recognition, and the unspoken bond formed in shared experience and mutual acknowledgement of courage and integrity. The heat of the day softened, shadows lengthened, and the outpost seemed to hold its breath, the distant whine of machinery blending with the natural rhythm of the desert, as if acknowledging the significance of the moment and the human whose quiet bravery had commanded attention and altered perception. Daniel remained fully present, each breath, each heartbeat measured and steady, a silent statement that honor, empathy, and moral courage were not confined by species. And as the final rays of sunlight touched the platform, even the wind seemed to carry the resonance of his unwavering choice across the outpost, a testament to the quiet yet powerful force of principled action in a world defined by law, expectation, and the watchful eyes of many. The late afternoon sun cast a warm amber glow across Kareth Outpost, stretching the shadows of the platform and framework long across the red dust as Daniel Carter remained standing with measured composure, his posture a blend of calm endurance and quiet pride. Lyra Valen's eyes, bright and reflective against her blue skin, followed him with a new depth of recognition, a subtle transformation in her expression revealing respect and the first true glimmer of trust. The attendants stepped back, the ceremonial instruments now fully still, the silence of the square profound, broken only by the distant hum of mining machinery and the whisper of wind over metal structures. The crowd of onlookers, both human and alien, remained hushed, their collective gaze drawn to the human who had chosen moral courage over convenience, empathy over indifference. Daniel felt the warmth of the sun against his shoulders and the faint grit of dust beneath his boots, anchoring him to the moment as he took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat steady and sure, each inhale and exhale a quiet testament to endurance and principle. Lyra stepped slightly forward, her posture relaxing as she extended her hand briefly toward Daniel, not in submission, but in acknowledgement of the steadfast integrity he had displayed, a human courage that transcended the rigid expectations of her people. The alien sentinels, bronze armor reflecting the last rays of sunlight, observed the scene with quiet attentiveness, and even they seemed to sense the significance of this rare interaction between human determination and alien tradition. In the distance, the towers and mining rigs of the outpost shimmered in the heat, grounding the moment in the tangible reality of the settlement while underscoring the extraordinary moral act taking place within its heart. The murmurs of the crowd had softened into an attentive silence, a collective witness to the quiet power of principle in action, and Daniel remained fully present, each breath, each heartbeat a silent declaration that honor, empathy, and courage could exist across the boundaries of species. Lyra's expression softened further, her eyes reflecting the subtle warmth of acknowledgement and gratitude, the tension in her shoulders released as she recognized the human standing beside her not only as an ally, but as a figure embodying the quiet strength of moral integrity. The wind lifted the fine dust around them in slow swirls, carrying with it the resonance of human resolve, a gentle yet powerful reminder of the enduring impact of compassion and courage in a world governed by law, tradition, and the watchful eyes of many. Daniel's gaze swept briefly across the square, noting the distant settlement structures and the endless desert stretching toward the horizon, grounding him in the reality of the outpost while highlighting the significance of the moment, the quiet act that had bridged understanding between worlds. Lyra's lips curved faintly, a small, unspoken acknowledgement of the bond formed in shared recognition, and the last rays of sunlight touched their figures, casting long shadows that merged across the red dust, a visual echo of connection, respect, and the quiet triumph of principle over fear and expectation, leaving the square awash in the serene glow of mutual understanding and human courage witnessed and honored.